Ready to go? Okay. Morning, everyone. I'd like to open the regular board meeting of Tuolumne Utilities District of Tuesday, February 11th. And if everyone would rise for the pledge, join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. This is a public forum. I'd like to open that. We would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This section is for comments on items not listed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. While no action or discussion may be undertaken by the board on topics presented in this section, board members are listening carefully to these comments and appreciate your input. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the board? Okay, I don't see anyone. But before I close the public forum, I just wanted to make a few comments here, if everyone doesn't mind. I want to thank Haley, and I'm not doing this to put you on the spot or embarrass you. I just want to thank you for stepping up to take over for Melissa, who had to get called away on some sort of emergency. And the reason why I bring this up is, well, first of all, I want to thank you for doing a good job. A couple meetings ago, you stepped up, took over from Melissa, and I read through the minutes from the meeting, and you did a good job, and apparently you did a good job because the rest of the board agreed. It was a 4-0 vote. So, but the reason why I brought this up is that this is what what our staff does is this. Haley has her job that she does day in, day out of various tasks and so on. But we have a emergency, if you want to call it that, come up where we have a vacancy. And so she steps up and takes over and we move forward. And I think that's commendable. And it's not just Haley. Last week I had the opportunity to ride or actually hitch a ride with Tony Gonzalez, one of our engineers, and we went to a Tuolumne County's Natural Resource Committee meeting. And here's a guy that's got all kinds of things on his plate that he's supposed to be doing, and because there was no one to attend that meeting, which was an important one, he was tasked to do it. So he drops his job, and now he's the PR and info person for TUD at the meeting. I think this is really commendable. And like I said, I'm bringing this up because what we do here is all important. We're talking about health and safety for a large portion of the county, the people of the county. And so every position here supports the whole of the utility. And so we've got all sorts of cross training and succession planning. And that is what it takes if we're going to take on this very, very important task of health and safety for the community. So I'm just wondering if maybe we couldn't, at some point in time, Mr. Jam, maybe have that in the coach's corner about the cross training and succession planning. I think that would be something the board would like to hear about, as well as our ratepayers. So, because it's an important part. I mean, we don't just dig ditches, fix pipe, or treat water and whatever. I mean, there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot of people that work hand in hand and then pick up the slack when something comes down so that we can accomplish that. So.
Thank you for recognizing, and I don't need an excuse to talk about our crews and our staff. Yeah, what we do is important. We don't have a choice in the matter. We say that all the time. It's a challenge working here, and Hallie's figuring it out. So is Tony and everybody else. So yeah, we'd be happy to bring up to Coach's Corner.
Right.
Somewhere down the road.
So unless there's any other comments, I will close the consent calendar, or excuse me, the public forum. And Hallie, you're up.
The consent calendar, item 1, minutes of the special board meeting of January 28, 2025. Item 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director's statement of meetings attended and or travel expenses, and claim summary for January 2025.
Okay, is there any board member that would like to pull an item? Seeing none? Okay, sorry, I have to. Claim summary. Page 21 of 23. State Water 21 of 23. State Water Resource Control Board. System annual fees, over $80,000. What in the world are we being shook down for this time?
Well, you know, some of them are listening. These are, I didn't look at it closely, but these are our annual, or at least semi-annual permits to run our water. This is for our water systems and sewer systems. These are permitted by the state, and the state provides some service to us, of which they charge us a fair amount of money for. So the good news is we've reduced our systems, permitted water systems, from 11 down to 8. So we'll should see some reduction in permit fees in the future.
Especially after Deer Pines?
Yeah, a few years from now, that should even be better. Yep.
Okay, that might be another subject for down the road, is just unfunded mandates and how many fees and things that are slapped on us, that so the ratepayers understand that, you know, that this isn't just a big money bag thing that keeps collecting. As fast as it comes in, it goes right back out. And it's not necessarily to the things that we want it going to. We have no choice.
Right.
So, anyway. And then also on that same page, Synagro Technologies, $86,000 for biosolids. And the only reason I bring this up, this is something that, a subject that I'm probably wearing out, but I hope that the all the work and time that I put into that biochar, biosolids thing has not fallen into a black hole, because I see there's another $80,000 that could have stayed in our pockets, that could have been used. You know, we could have used biosolids to make the biochar, which could be sold, which would be not only stop the outflow of the 80,000, but another positive stream of income coming in. So are we working on it, or did it fall in a black hole?
We're working on it, just as we talked about the last ad hoc committee.
Okay.
First steps first.
Okay. Just had to do
Yeah.
a little jab there. Keep things
Melt
moving.
it.
Okay. With that, and if there's no other comments or anything?
I got one comment.
Yep.
As a follow-up to your question, Director Ringen, on the State Water Resources Control Board fees there, there's an $8,800 fee there for Twain Harte. So does Twain Harte participate in that fee as well, or is that all us, or how does that, can you explain to me how that all works out there?
Well, Twain Harte is for the wastewater. And because we still have waste discharge requirements associated with the Twain Harte wastewater plant,
Mhm.
we pay that now. Does Twain Harte CSD participate in that fee? They do indirectly through their service charges that they pay.
Okay.
You know, for the number of connections that they have.
Okay, so that's the connection, and that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Any other board comments or anything? No? Anyone from the public wish to address the consent calendar? No? Okay, then I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, 4-0 passes. Back to you, Haley.
Regular business, item 3, overview of the Tuolumne Utilities District grants process and status.
Okay, before Abby takes off on this, I just want to sort of prep the board a little bit. I've had an opportunity to review this presentation a couple of times, and I'm just, this is one of those items that we as staff have had sort of in the back pocket, waiting for an opportunity when there's a light agenda, so we can, you know, slide this in here. It's valuable information. I don't know how much it's understood or appreciated the effort that TUD has undertaken over the decades as far as grants. And I personally am very proud of what we do. And this presentation really should be informative. And I hope that you agree with me on how well we're doing and how bright the future is with our grants program. So anyway, enjoy. It should be good.
Okay, good morning, members of the board and members of the community that have joined us today. Yeah, as Dawn said, this is, we hope this presentation is very informative for you to give you a good overview of the process we take when we're looking for grants, when we're applying for grants, and when we're administering grants, but as well as we took a snapshot of the last decade since 2015 through now of the grants that we've applied for, that we've received, that we haven't received, and then the ones that are pending. So you had just one item in your board packet, and that was the snapshot that showed you kind of a status of this last 10 years of grants. So we will review that towards the end of the presentation, but I hope that, you know, throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please feel free at any time to ask questions. I will pause between sections, so if there's something that you wanted to ask about something we just talked about, there'll be an opportunity to do that. And while I'm presenting this this item today, there's a lot of folks that contributed to this. Certainly Emily Long, who does now and moving forward the majority of the application and management of the grants, as well as Eric and his team who have actually been the applicators, excuse me, the ones who have applied for some of our largest grants over the last 10 years. And then the whole management team in making sure that we could portray this in a way that you understand and will be as informative as possible. So without further ado, I will go into the presentation as long as everything is working. There we go. Okay, so just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. The first one is pretty obvious, why we look for grant funding. Then the types of grants that we look for, the process in which we identify the grants that we would be competitive with, the roles and responsibilities of grants and management here, typical funding programs, the grant eligibility criteria that we follow. And then at the end, again, like I mentioned, we'll show you a snapshot of the grants that we've applied for in the last 10 years. And lastly, the cost of free money, just the resources that are needed to not only apply and manage the grants, but also any cost shares that may be applied to grants that we have to consider when we're looking at the projects. And then for us to be able to share with you all so you can make informed decisions about the grants that we accept. Okay, so again, this is a bit obvious, but we look for grant funding, obviously, because we want to be able to take on some critical projects for infrastructure, for fuels mitigation, all sorts of projects that are very important to the district that we just don't have the budget for. And so we want to stretch the ratepayer dollar and be able to do extra projects, extra things with that money that we wouldn't otherwise normally be able to do. That tank there on the screen is the new Zone 4 tank, soon to be the new white fur tank, once the old white fur tank is gone. But this is up in the Sugar Pine area, and we're gonna have a nice event there in the spring. The types of grants we look for, we'll go over each one of these separately as well. So infrastructure improvements and consolidation, hazardous fuels reduction around critical district facilities, water supply and reservoir improvements, hazard mitigation, disaster relief, innovative solutions and emerging industry topics like unfunded mandates, like President Ringen was just talking about. So like I said, we'll go over each one of those. So starting with infrastructure improvement, we have a lot of main line, a lot of water line, a lot of sewer line in the ground, and much of it is outdated and reaching the end of its useful life, as we like to say, or maybe has surpassed the end of its useful life. And so we have received quite a number of grants and are still applying for a number of grants to replace water main lines and ultimately aiming to have a reliable system and reliable water supply to the community. Storage tanks, we have about 60 right now, and that has come down. We've taken some out of commission, many out of commission over the last decade or so, strategically keeping the water supply and the water tanks where we need them, but and still to have the redundancy that we need, but not too many that we have, well, certainly ones that are failing, and that we've been able to engineer the system so that we could do it a little bit more efficiently and still maintain that water supply. So we've put up new tanks, we've taken down tanks, we've upgraded tanks, and we're always looking for grants for those types of projects. Wastewater improvement, we have also many thousands of miles of collection system pipeline that needs rehabilitation, treatment plant upgrades just on the heels of the regional wastewater treatment facility grant award that we got for that. And ultimately, we want to reduce our maintenance costs, become more efficient and more reliable as well on that side as well. And then what the grant of the day for system consolidation. So we've done a number of things in our system over the last 2 decades towards Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility. And we're now finally where we have a grant award. And so we've been doing a number of things over the last 10 years on pipeline improvements and consolidation efforts and redundancy projects to be able to support that in addition to the grant application for Sierra Pines. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in here that I don't know, I think some people don't really understand what grants are all about. But for TUD or for any utility to get a grant, usually you have to have a rates system that supports it. In other words, the State Water Board and whoever else is distributing this money is not going to give it to a utility that's not trying their very best to take care of business by themselves. This is for projects that ratepayers in that certain utility area would never be able to afford. But the project is very, very important to the ongoing operation of that utility. So they don't just throw the money around. You've got to be in need, and also you have got to already have been have, like I said, a rate structure in place that shows that you are really, really, truly trying on your own to make things happen. So I just thought I'd throw that in there.
That's an excellent point. And luckily, here at TUD, I know Carolyn can attest to this, our financials and our audits have been clean for 10 years plus. And so we have an outstanding finance team, and they make sure that everything is exactly how it should be, so that when we are looking for grants, and they do go through with a very fine tooth comb all of the financials and all of the reports and audits, that you're right, President Ringen, that we are at the top of the list. We're at the A+ rating, if we're self-proclaimed, but I think but I think we would all agree in this room. Yeah, that's outstanding. And we're gonna cover some of the criteria at the end, but you're absolutely right. Grants don't come easy. So one of the reasons why we're so proud of being able to share this with you today, because there's a lot that goes into it. So very, very excellent point. Okay, another type of grant that we look for, especially in the last 10 years, but very recently, is hazardous fuels reduction. Okay, so we are in a very wildfire prone area. And so on a regular basis, in fact, every year for about the last 5 years, every single year, we've gotten grant awards for hazardous fuels reduction to do fuel breaks, shaded fuel breaks, brushing, clearing, all measure of hazard mitigation around our critical facilities, including the Lions Main Canal, which was that was about 6 years ago now, and it's on your list. This one right here is just a before and after photos of TUD critical fuels reduction project, actually phase 3 that we've gotten through CAL FIRE at the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant. So that was done this past year. It looks really great there. There was about 26, 29 acres in the area that was cleared up and around, and lots of coordination with property owners in the area. So there's a lot of coordination that go into these projects, but they're vital for ensuring the safety and sustainability of our infrastructure. And then actually, I'll just share, in the last 10 years, we've received just under $2 million in hazardous fuels reduction projects. So, okay, we're gonna move on to water supply and reservoir improvements. So lots of, so we have our water supply, and we've got a couple of reservoirs that we've made improvements to. When we apply for grants for these, we're looking at erosion control, sediment removal, dam improvements and maintenance, and reservoir storage. So while you're not going to see Phoenix Lake preservation and restoration on the spreadsheet in the last 10 years, because we got the award just before that, we did do that project and a number of other projects. Matlow was done actually just before that 10-year mark. We've done some spillway projects at Phoenix Lake. We also have applied for a couple of other grants for Phoenix Lake, and then we also have currently pending grants with FEMA to do some repairs of the damage that occurred during disasters of 22 and 23. So we'll also go through that, but just wanted to give you a couple of examples there. Okay, and we currently have a couple of hazard mitigation grant out there. These are other grants that we are constantly looking at every year. Cal OES, which is California Office of Emergency Services, sort of does the beginning stages of the hazard mitigation grant program through FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And so currently, right now, we have two projects that we have applied for through this HMGP program. The first is the Tuolumne Utilities District Lions Main Canal Resiliency Project, which aims to mitigate wildfire risk that are impacting the main Tuolumne Canal. This is the third time that we've applied for this type of grant for this project. The first one was a large full-scale project, but the last two have been planning grants to do it's called Advanced Assistance, and to do an analysis of the main Tuolumne Canal and what kind of alternate water supply infrastructure we could put there that would be less susceptible to fire. And then we have the Tuolumne Utilities Raw Water Reservoir Hazard Mitigation Project, which is the raw water reservoir that will be at the future Sierra Pines Water Treatment Facility. What's nice about this one is we have this grant application through FEMA, but it's also included in the full-scale Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility grant application that we just were awarded. So we are hopeful that we could get the funding through FEMA under hazard mitigation. That would lower the amount that we would need on the Sierra Pines project as a whole.
Question?
Yes.
Just a little background. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about the 2015 HUD funding for the main canal bypass that was denied? Almost 40 million. Just a little background on what the history of that grant, that project.
Sure, and maybe Eric, you can,
And
yes.
if it's appropriate to do it later, that's fine too. Just
Yeah,
curious.
no, but let's go ahead and cover it now. Do you have more information maybe about that one?
I'll try to just say that there was, in the wake of the Rim Fire and other disasters nationally, there was what they called a National Disaster Resiliency Competition sponsored by the federal government for counties throughout the country to basically apply. And the goal was to look for innovative projects that would really improve resiliency. Tuolumne County worked closely with TUD on looking for projects. The project we put forth was this 40 million, what the number you said, to create a bypass of the Tuolumne Main Canal, and in particular, all the wooden flume structures that are highly vulnerable to fire and tree fall and rock slide. Unfortunately, where it says denied in there is the county decided for one reason or another to put forth the resiliency centers. There's one constructed in Groveland and one in Tuolumne City. And due to just the funding limits, those two ended up being included in the application that was put forth to the federal government, and our project was not selected.
Yeah, I followed that really closely. Tom Sasha was deeply involved in that. And I'm not sure, you may be correct about what happened as far as the county goes, but my understanding was that we got denied because we did not own the main canal, PG&E did, and therefore, for whatever reason, that wasn't considered something that we should get a grant to take care of, that it was up to PG&E to do it. And so this makes it be just one more imperative reason why we stick to trying to negotiate with PG&E and acquire that system. Because even like right now, this summer, let's say this summer, if we have God help us, I don't even want to say this because I don't want to jinx this, but if we were to have a fire and that flume went down, there's no FEMA funds for that. That's going to be on PG&E. And, you know, that's not a good position for TUD to be in. We need that system.
Yes.
So,
That's great context. I think that that was largely part of the reason, timing wise. I think that in addition to a number of other factors was just too much to overcome. But yeah, very good point.
I'll just take the moment to, the discussion of the Lions Tuolumne Main Canal resiliency project will be the focus of another coach's corner in the future. Been planning on that one for a while. So
great,
we'll tease out all these things that may or may not have happened over the decades.
great.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. So when those were hazard mitigation, now, you know, when disaster strikes, there are, currently, we're afforded the, disaster relief public assistance grants through FEMA. And we currently, if you recall, we had 2 declared disasters, one, from December 2022 to January 23, and a second one immediately after that from February to March of 23. So two back-to-back disasters. These public assistance grants are for immediate relief efforts post-disaster. So we experienced quite a bit of damage from those 2 storms. The biggest damage was to our north pool of Phoenix Lake. That was part of that first FEMA disaster 4683. We submitted 8 projects. They help us kind of put projects together and lump them into, so we had a lot of stuff going on, but it kind of came down to 8 projects in that disaster, 4 of which have been obligated, which means we've gotten funding for, but there's still about half of them that are currently pending review, and Phoenix Lake is one of those. That total public assistance ask for that disaster was $3.5 million. The second disaster on this slide right now for 4699, that was, we had another additional 5 projects. It wasn't as significant as the first disaster, but 4 of them have been obligated, and we're waiting on one that's in review right now. That was about $63,000 worth of damage. And that is a process, the FEMA process. So Emily could tell you all about it. It's so that's been 2 years now since those disasters, to give you an idea of about how long it takes to get funding. And so we're hopeful that we'll hear more. Did they say by summer, or did they not give you a? Yeah. They had what, 5,000? They had 5,000 projects in the queue on these disasters. So I'm sure and they've had a few more since, so.
A question?
Yes.
The 4 that have been obligated, what's the dollar value of that? Ballpark?
The dollar amounts that I gave you were for all of the projects.
Right,
So you're asking for the dollar amount of what's been obligated?
correct.
I don't have the number in
Just a
front of
rough
me.
idea. Just curious.
Well, it's probably less than 500,000 because Phoenix Lake is the majority. Yeah,
Okay.
so less than 500,000.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, emergency industry topics. So these cover, you know, we look for grants to address all sorts of things that come down the pike that we aren't necessarily expecting. Sometimes we have more advanced warning to prepare and to try and fund these things, but these are water and wastewater utilities challenges, including water quality, conservation, drought, climate change, and those unfunded mandates, President Ringen, to enhance the district's resiliency. So a few of those that we listed here are water reuse and conservation. So advanced water saving technologies, such as we just put in a grant application for smart meters. So remote read meters, and that have higher technology than the ones we currently have. So we are waiting on that one. Certainly lots of grants related to climate change. So and drought mitigation. So we've applied to several that fall into that category. California Air Resources Control Board, sorry, I have Control Board in my mind, California Air Resources Board, CARB. There's pending current regulations that were implemented that we have a timeline on to be able to make some changes to our fleet to the zero emissions vehicles regulations. So we have applied for some funding on that. More funding we're hoping is coming down the pike for that, and really more clarity and understanding of what's needed. A lot of the regulations right now from CARB are requiring us to have equipment and vehicles that haven't been developed yet. So that's a challenging one for us. And then those unfunded mandates, just like you said, President Ringen, where we have these, we have to comply with these regulatory requirements that come down the pike, new and future water quality regulations surrounding contaminants, just like we've got, think PFAS, think lead service lines, those types of things. So we're always looking for funding to be able to comply with all of those. Because those are, in addition to new things that we're now trying to pivot and try and find funding for. Okay, so we are switching to going through the process a little bit more, how we identify grants. And so I thought I would take a moment to just give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions if you didn't already get them answered about the first section. Did I miss anything okay. Awesome. Okay. In retrospect, I'm thinking maybe this would have been in first, but so how do we identify grants? How do we look for grants? How do we even know what kind of grants to go for? And so we're going to be going through these one by one, so I'll go to the next slide. But well, first, management meets on a regular basis. We meet weekly. We're always talking about the district needs and our funding gaps. Okay, we have a lot of needs and we just don't have the funding for them, as we've talked about. So we're constantly, Eric and his team are constantly reviewing CIP projects and then working very closely with ops and seeing what their needs are. And so we're constantly assessing what's needed, what we don't have the money for, and how can we fit them into one of these grant opportunities. It's definitely a collaborative effort. Every department is involved in grants, from engineering and administrative services, but operations and finance, of course. Two primary roles in the grant management right now is for engineering department and administrative services. So really, Emily is our main who has the main responsibility for finding grants and applying for grants and will be managing grants. She already is managing a number of those grants that we just talked about. And then engineering department really basically gives us the information we need on the projects, on the funding needs, on the deadlines and the timelines, and they're ultimately responsible for executing the projects as well. And then with that, we get a lot of information from Eric Hall and his operations team to make sure that we're getting all of the information and that we need to put a nice competitive application out there. And then, of course, Carolyn and her team, they have to make sure we're doing the accurate accounting for it and how that fits into the budget. Okay, so we're constantly researching opportunities. So they come from a number of different sources, such as the industry associations that we belong to. IRWM, Mountain Counties, Aqua, CSDA, all of those associations, as well as sometimes they come from board members, sometimes they come from other agencies that share what's going on. Sometimes they come from the county. But also we look at grants.gov, which has all of the grants you could possibly ever want to look at, hundreds and hundreds of grant opportunities. And so we go through those and then we start matching them to our projects to meet our district's strategic goals. We also attend funding fairs. Some of them are in person, some of them are virtual, but these funding fairs connect grant seekers like us with the grant makers, and serve as a platform for us to be able to see multiple different funding opportunities and meet the people that actually would be looking at our application and getting more information about how to make our application competitive, what they're looking for. And so is a really good networking opportunity for us to be face to face with these folks that we're asking money from. We also get a number of notice of funding opportunities or NOFOs, again, via email from various different sources. But these, after we've figured out what grant opportunity we can look at, then we're going to match that grant with a project. And we want it to align with what our strategic plan is. And we have to also make sure it fits within the grant criteria and the guidelines. And then ultimately, costs come into play, the timeline for the application of the grant, the timeline for the use of the funds, all of those things come into play. Okay, this is just a snapshot of the most common funding sources. All of these listed are funding sources that we have received grants from. So CAL FIRE, California Office of Emergency Services, Community Development Block Grant. We had a big Sonora City distribution improvement project that was a CDBG grant a number of years ago. Department of Water Resources, the EPA, FEMA, as I've mentioned a couple times, TSTAN, IRWM, State Water Resources Control Board, USDA, U.S. Forest Service, and the Water Smart Grant, which is the Bureau of Reclamation. So lots of different funding sources that we try and tap into. Okay, and then the typical eligibility criteria that we're constantly looking at to fit our projects to grants are, here's a number of them, disadvantaged communities. So some of these grant opportunities are specifically for DAC communities or disadvantaged communities, and that will influence the cost share from the district. So typically, if there is a DAC community that your project that lands in or your project impacts, the district's cost share would be either less or zero or somewhere in between. So those are competitive projects when it's a DAC community. Obviously, it's important to have environmental reviews done. Typically, the environmental has to be done in order for a project to be considered project ready, shovel ready. And so those are things that, we may have a tight application deadline, and sometimes we just can't get the environmental done on a project prior to the application deadline. And so a shovel ready project, that's basically a project, it's a construction or an infrastructure project that's ready to begin immediately upon receiving funding. So that means that there's been advanced planning, design, and engineering and environmental for that grant opportunity to be eligible. And then also just strict requirements to make sure that, okay.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, I didn't
No problem.
interrupt her, but that shovel ready shovel ready projects is really, really important because a lot of grants come up and they really have a short leash on them.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how many, we've got plenty of projects. I'm sure they're all on paper somewhere, but how many of them are actually shovel ready so that if there's a grant that pops up, that we're able to jump on it with both feet?
I'll give a non-engineering answer and Eric will clean this thing up. But I think when we think shovel ready, I think it depends on the project, right? If shovel ready means wastewater treatment plant, is it shovel ready? That takes an awful lot of planning and engineering and design. If we're talking about a main line extension, whether it's water or sewer, it takes a little bit less planning and design, right? So it just depends. So to answer how many we have, it depends on the project, but how would you answer that, Eric?
Well, I think the way you answer is it's good, but we do take some liberty in our interpretation definition of shovel-ready. So if Emily identifies a funding source for a project that has a tight time frame, and it's a fairly simple design, and it's a CEQA exempt, meaning environmentally exempt, and there's no right-of-way, no need to negotiate easements or purchase land, then we'll just say, we'll advertise it's shovel-ready, and we will work as hard as we possibly can to make sure we meet the grant deadlines, even though technically it's not sitting on a shelf ready to pull off. So we are a little loose in our interpretation of that, but certainly, like Dawn said, some of these projects, the only way to really be shovel-ready is to do potentially years of advanced planning work, including environmental and land acquisition and whatnot. Those are the Sierra Pines of the world and the regional wastewater treatment plant. But sorry, I don't have a number of how many projects.
Yeah, I really didn't want a number. I knew you couldn't give me one, but I guess where I was going with this is that we're back to planning, being out in front, being proactive. And that big bond that went through at the last election, I can't remember the number of it. It was 40 or something like, what, 40, 80, something like. Four, yeah, okay. There is a ton of money in there for water type projects. And so I would hope that we have combed through our vast amount of projects and picked out some that would fit into that criteria, even though we may not know, well, they should have the criteria out by now, but of what it's going to take to apply for those, and have those certain projects already in the mill and being worked towards, so that as soon as it's possible to apply for the grant, we jump on it and get first in the list. There's another, it's 90. I don't know whether it's AB 90 or what that they're going to be pushing for to pass here in Sacramento coming up. And that's going to be another one that's going to be very, very important for us to keep an eye on and see what projects we have that we need to get done that we can't afford, that maybe we can get grant money through that. So that's the only reason I bring it up, is that, you know, if we're thinking ahead and we've got some of the important part of the planning already taken care of, then to roll out the rest of it won't be as bad, and maybe we can meet some of these tight deadlines.
Yeah, for me, the most important thing that I heard, which is the subject of next Coach's Corner, is a plan. You gotta have a plan.
Right.
And so we'll talk about our planning efforts, because there's no sense searching for grants that we don't, that's not in our plan. It's not in our purview, right? They gotta fit within what we're doing, so. But the other thing on this slide that I wanted to bring to your attention a little bit is DAC. You know, we've heard of disadvantaged communities for quite some time, but some new terms we're going to start hearing are the underserved communities and communities at risk. Those are going to be some other opportunities besides DAC community that we'll be paying attention for. Thanks.
Great. And I would venture to say, you know, Eric's team spends a lot of time on the 5-year CIP, which is just that, is pre-planning, you know, not to a super level detail, maybe 5 years out, but, you know, we have a 5-year plan of CIP with hundreds of projects that have been contemplated and planned. And so it's nice when we see grant opportunities where we can, and we pick from those projects, because then we can make, if they're not shovel ready, they're just about shovel ready, and we can get them there. So they do a lot of pre-planning on those. Yes, Director Jacobs.
Just two things. One, on the 5-year plan, how far do we typically, what is our typical planning horizon for projects? Or how far out do we look ahead?
Honestly, we look at the 5-year CIP, and then we usually have a list that exceeds our funding capacity for the 5-year that bleeds out as far as another 5. So,
Okay.
you know, a 10-year planning horizon, but for really, really large projects, I mean, they've been thought about, analyzed, so maybe some alternatives well beyond 10 years.
Right.
But they don't manifest in your capital and they don't really show up as a line item in a budget. So you don't really think there's necessarily much work being done. But certainly when you look at, you know, the Lions Main Canal, there's a whole body of work out there that is on the shelf and available to Emily whenever she looks and finds a grant, potential grant for that. So we have a library of projects, and our planning horizon is 5 years for the funding, probably closer to 10 years when you look at our tanks and other infrastructure improvements too.
Okay. And we may cover this when we do the planning coaches corner, but I would just, as a board member and attending various conferences and what other districts are doing, some folks look out 100 years, some look out 50 years, 25 years. You know, I have 7 grandkids, so I'm thinking of, you know, what their life's going to be in the county. They all live in the county, fortunately, and their kids and so forth. So I would just encourage to kind of stretch the planning horizon as far as we can see. The headlights only go so far in the fog, but at least if we know which direction we're moving. So I would just encourage to stretch that planning horizon as far as we can think. And then secondly, on disadvantaged community, and then Director Reagan, President Reagan, on the disadvantaged community, I'd like to learn a little bit about how they're designated. Is it by zip code? Is it by county? Do we have a lot of DAC communities and the underserved and communities at risk? So how does that designate to a particular project? Does a project have to be in the zip code that I'm a little fuzzy on how that works, and maybe that's another topic of discussion, but just curious.
I think we could take a shot at it now. And so each grant funding authority kind of has its own rules when it comes to disadvantaged community, if I'm right. And so typically you would find your project area and there's different mapping that's used to kind of drag the whole area on the map and see within that. It has to do typically with median household income, the MHI, but that can also be different for different grant opportunities. So, and then I'm sure the at-risk communities, there's going to be some different definitions on that, again, depending on the grant funding. So where we have found that under one funding authority, we've had a project that was considered DAC, where in another one, it may not be considered DAC. So so it does depend a little bit, and it's a little bit fluid like that. And with each grant, Emily has to do that analysis of where the project is, where the project benefits are going to be, and whether if it fits into that category or not.
So is it the area of interest based on a project by project basis? Is it county-wide or TUD service area wide? How's that work?
It's on a project by project basis. So, and the community that benefits. So if it's a small project in the Cedar Ridge area,
Right.
that doesn't impact the rest of our service area, that it would be just isolated to that area and the customers that are served by that project.
So it's basically a case by case basis?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Director Jacobs, I will say that they use the census tract and census block information. So like Abby said, but then we overlap. So our system boundary may overlay on the census tract, census block. And those are the units. The census blocks are the smallest unit usually where they have data on MHI, median household income.
Is that the same as zip code, or is it different?
I don't see zip codes as often used. It's usually census information.
Census block, okay, thanks.
And if I will, real quick, I just don't want you to go away feeling like we don't plan beyond 10 years.
I know you.
So we plan projects maybe on that horizon, but we design projects different between the planning horizon and the design horizon. When we get down to design, we're designing that, useful life of the project, pipelines 90, 100 years,
Right.
Treatment plants 40 years, 50 years. Yeah, so I just want to make sure,
Yeah,
clarify that.
I gathered that. Thanks.
So that, I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly where I was going to go. Just for your information, long before 2012, it was being talked about as well as the property was purchased of Sierra Pines. In 2012, it was just a dream. But we were, at that time, the board was presented with, I believe, 10 different options, if I remember correctly. And so they're planning well beyond 5, 10 years. I mean, we're talking way down the road. And look, today, we're on the cusp of it finally coming to be. We still got a ways to go, but that is one heck of a project that's going to correct a lot of issues. So it's not a 5 or 10 year planning thing. It's way more than that.
Memory, we purchased that in 2005 or 6. About 20 years ago, we purchased the property. So exactly what you said. Okay.
Wanted to say also that that's the new one that's going in. The one that just went in was the wastewater treatment facility. It's very state of the art, very long range, and it can be expanded. So I'm coming on the same line as talking. It's a lot of years looking in the future, not just short.
Okay, great discussion. Okay, this is a little bit repetitive of a slide because we did talk about the types of slide, but these are, again, the kind of the categories of grants that we've applied for in the past 10 years. So before we get too much into the nitty gritty of what the actual grants are, this is just a summary of that. Does anyone have any questions about any of these types of grants that we've applied for or what anything means on here? Okay, I'm gonna forge ahead then. Okay, because this is a good slide. Okay, so in the last 10 years, so we have been busy on applying for grants. We've applied for $144 million worth of grants. We have been awarded 55 million. So if average over 10 years, 5.5 million a year, which is close to what our water capital budget is. So that's pretty impressive. If you ran it over 10 years through $55 million would be about $31 a month per customer. So that's really substantial when you're looking at a monthly bill, $31 a month. And so we're really proud of the efforts that, like I said, it's definitely a collaborative effort. And we anticipate getting a lot more grants here as well, but we've gotten some very large awards. This doesn't include the low interest loans or the zero interest loans that we've also received. So that number would be much larger with Sierra Pines award that we just got, as well as the regional wastewater treatment facility. So speaking of those, just wanted to kind of highlight those. They are the largest grant awards that we've received. And again, they also have pieces of low interest or no interest loan that go along with it. But that on the left, you've got the regional wastewater treatment facility, which we just finished last year. And then the Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility at just under 25 million of grant only. So that's pretty substantial. You have that table in front of you. Does anyone have any questions about the table of grants? Just to kind of review it, it has the funding source, it has the funding grant name, it has the project name, the year, the amount that was asked for, and the status, whether it was awarded, denied, or is pending. can go back.
I have one. Can we get a hard copy or a download copy of the slides as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Abby, if I may just add,
Absolutely.
Abby highlighted that there's an asterisk at the bottom related to low interest loans. When you add the low interest loans amount just from the regional and Sierra Pines, that's an additional 43 million. Some of those are zero interest, so you can't get any lower on interest. And then the others are 2.3, 2.4%. We do also have some other loans out there that we've acquired in the last 10-year time horizon. But yeah, so when you add the 43 to the 55, you're pushing close to 100 million. And the other thing I want to just highlight for the board is that that's in addition to the capital program. So our capital program currently is, around 6.5 million annually for water, and say around another 2 for wastewater. So what we're pushing through the district on average is 5.5 million in grant, plus if you add the low interest loans, you're another 4 to 5. So 10 million in external funding, plus your 8.5 of district funded projects. So it becomes a pretty large volume of expenditure and investment coming through. I just want to bring that up because sometimes the low interest loans, they don't seem as glamorous as the grants. I wish they were grants, but they still come with a burden in terms of managing, monitoring, and certainly the audits that come with those as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that. That was good.
Question?
Yes.
So,
Oh, go back.
yeah, just going back to the list, I wonder if someone could run a quick total of the pending grants.
Sure. How about I go to this slide?
Beautiful, thank you. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you for asking. So we have I think there's 9 or 10 pending grant applications out there for just over $20 million currently. The largest of which is about $6 million for the hazard mitigation grant program for Sierra Pines raw water. Again, if we were to get that through the hazard mitigation grant, which, we're cautiously optimistic, but we are hopeful for that, that would then also reduce the amount of that funding gap for the Sierra Pines regional water facility. Any questions about pending? Yes.
Just curious, what, if anything, can we as a board do to accelerate, enhance, support, move forward some of these pending grants? Is there anything that you think we could do?
Well, I mean, certainly you can advocate for them in your own circles. You guys have been extremely supportive of the grant applications that we've brought to you for approval and the grant awards that we've brought to you for approval. So in supporting the strategic plan and supporting the CIP is all in support of this whole program. So you made me think of that we did just receive a letter of support from Congressman Tom McClintock for the Lions Mane Canal Resiliency Project.
Great.
That went straight to the federal government, FEMA, for that application. And so, yeah, any information that you can share with folks outside of TUD in your conversations with other local, state, federal partners, that all helps.
Thanks to Board President Ringen for his contact with Representative McClintock through all these years. It's been paying off.
Yeah, that's how I was going to answer that same question. So every dollar that we receive is important, that we have the opportunity is really important to TUD. Now, if somebody said, okay, TUD, we're tired of hearing you complain. Here's $150 million, go away. Okay, well, we can't handle that either. right? There's only so much that we can really get through. So while we endeavor to research out and seek, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of grants, some, and maybe to each individual, or might be more important than others. And so me personally, what do is I do that very thing, or we do that very thing. I ask Abby and Emily to help me write these letters to Congressman McClintock and some of the Senator Alvarado Gill and others. And so we're pretty active and aggressive. That's not the right word, aggressive, but pretty active in engaging these people who make these decisions, right? Director Ringen and I went to Aqua last spring, which was in Sacramento, and a couple of the decision makers were up there in a panel. And we went up there and introduced ourselves and said, hey, by the way, we have this funding application in, and here's how it's going to benefit TUD and Tuolumne County, but this is how it's also going to support the state in its endeavor. So it's just being active, right? One thing that I've been taught a lot here, but one of the things that Abby taught me earlier on in my career here is if you want something, be intentional about it. Be intentional. Don't just think it's, write it down on paper and assume it's going to come to fruition. It's just not the way it's going to work. You have to be intentional. So we try to be really intentional about certain things that are really, really important to us.
So just to follow up on that, it would be like we're going to be some of us are going to be going to the Aqua conference, and there are other engagements we have and other folks that we're involved with. So would it be appropriate, or just a kind of a brainstorm, to put together a hit list, if you will, of influencers or decision makers that we could be very, engaged and intentional, if you will. So like, for example, when we're at the next Aqua conference, we can, if there's anybody on the hit list, we want to definitely get acquainted. So just a thought.
I think that's a great idea. I think, first, I think it'd be important to understand and know who the panelists are, who these people really are, and we can probably focus our questions and concerns or requests to those specific people. So before it gets there, let's understand who's going to be there and who what sort of breakout sessions you can go to, and that's in support of our requests. So, yeah.
Should work together in our asks, make sure that we're all same song. I had a question for you, Abby, just kind of an aside. I see all the greens and the oranges, and we got something like 29 greens and 6 oranges, so your 80% success rate looks like in there. What do other utilities, what's their success rate, do you know?
I don't.
How well are you doing? Because it looks good.
Yeah, that's actually something we just talked about, I think yesterday, right? So that's something that we'll be interested in finding out. We'll query
Curious.
other folks, and maybe they can give us what their success rate is, and somehow frame that and get some more information about how others are doing it, certainly in our mountain communities. Good question.
Well, are you,
Almost.
got more?
Just
Good.
2 more.
I'm not pushing you.
No problem. We put in this slide because there is a cost of free money. And it comes by way of a number of things, really staff resources, and sometimes, districts' actual money and cost shares. But, for grant writing and research development efforts, sometimes we have used a consultant to write a grant, like we did with EN2 on the wildfire mitigation, wildfire risk mitigation plan. And then sometimes we write them in-house. Most of the time we do them in-house. But so grant writing and research development efforts, this takes a lot of staff resources and expertise and institutional knowledge, and a lot of different people that have kind of their hands in the pot. And really just to really scour the eligibility requirements, because some of those NOFOs, notice of funding opportunities, and grant application eligibility criteria are how many pages long, Emily? Hundreds? Yeah. So it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get through them and make sure we're aligning so that we can actually be competitive, because it is a hefty amount of time to put in for something that you might not be competitive for. And then once you do get it, of course, we need to administer the grant and do reporting and make sure all of our claims and accounting is per their requirements and in compliance for there. And then, like I said, there's also cost share requirements for many of the grants. So we have to decide, based on the cost share and the resources that go into it, is it worth it for this grant? So those are the things that we just have to consider, because we want to apply for all of them, but like Don said, if we got 150 million, we wouldn't be able to handle it, but we also have to have the time to do it, manage it, and then any cost shares, and that might not fit into our budget, at least at the time of the grant. So those are all considerations. But in the end, I mean, we have seen that applying for grants and seeking them out is very much worth the effort. And so despite some of those challenges, the benefits outweigh the cost and are definitely providing a huge value to the community and stretching our ratepayers' dollars. So we just, it's very important. It's at the top of our priority list. And anytime we're looking at projects whether it's something that we already have down the pike or it's some new thing that's coming down from the state, grants are always on our mind, and you have a really great team here taking care of all of that. So with that is the end of our presentation. So if you guys have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Anybody?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Abby, great job to you and staff. Going to Aqua and whatnot, we're a decent sized utility. We're not the biggest by far. And when you look up and down the state and all the other entities, the large ones, the small ones, for an entity like ours to be able to get $55 million plus in grants over the last 10 years, that's a very impressive. So good job to you and Emily and everybody else and the staff that's been working on this. And as we all know, it's a big part of how we pay for things around here.
Yeah.
That's good. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to amen that. So one thing that occurred to me as we were talking about this, you were talking about the grant funding outweigh the cost. Have we done a cost benefit analysis or a return on investment? Like if we invest, $1,000 in time and effort to pursue grants, what's our return then? Or, just a return on investment of grant funding. And we may find that we may find that's one of the most profitable, cost-effective uses of our utilization of our resources. So, I mean, if we ramped up our grant-seeking efforts, by 20%, how would that impact our grants and low interest loans over the years? Just a thought.
We haven't, to my knowledge, have we specifically done that? I know different grants have different ROI, return on investment components to them, but.
Carolyn might be able to respond better. I don't know that we've done that analysis in-house for what our sort of overhead costs are but if they're already on the projects that are already on our capital schedule, then it's intended that we would fund those already. So any grants we can get are offsetting a cost we were already going to have. In addition, some grants allow for us to use force account labor, which is just a fancy way of saying our own staff, which is again a fixed cost. So it really helps us balance budgets when changes in revenue and whatnot is to go ahead and use grant dollars to pay labor, which, man, that yields, a multiplier effect on the benefit. So, but we haven't done that analysis. I'm sure we could spend some time. I think it will prove that that there's a great return on investment. What I don't know is how scalable it is, like how much more we can take on before it reaches some sort of point where you have to add additional staff.
Yeah, I would really advocate that we did not do that. I go by what has been accomplished. And all you got to do is walk into our GM's office and look on the wall and see all of the projects that have completed on them. Compare it to all the projects that we need to do, and you'll see that the return on investment is huge for grants. Not only that, but under Don Perkins and current staff, we've gone from, and you correct me if I'm wrong, from one construction repair crew to three that are working day in and day out on projects. Not only that, because of grants, we have completed projects that have been a pain in our rear end for years, like that Mono Way lift station. That was that was huge, and that was done by a outside contractor. We didn't even have to do anything other than have engineering. I shouldn't say anything other, but engineering took care of all the paperwork and getting the planning, and then turned it over to Nerich and Company, and away it went. We didn't have to get involved in it at all, other than just inspecting it. So the return on investment is huge. We don't need to look and spend a bunch of time of staff putting figures on paper, because we just go look and see what's been accomplished. Done deal.
I think one good indicator was something you guys came up here towards the very end about that average $5 million a year for 10 years. You divide that by our customers, that's some number of dollars per month, $31. So that's an indication that there's a good return on the investment, right? And so as a manager of this utility, I got to remind myself, and staff helps remind me that, you know, we have a big chore of just our day-to-day operations. It's a big lift every day to come in here and do our 8-hour job and move on. And you throw on, you know, the capital improvement plan, you throw on the development of the capital improvement plan, and all of these things, the workload is pretty heavy. So as a manager, I have to be very mindful of the workload, really. It's not just easy, for me, it's not as easy as just adding more staff and getting more done. If I could have done that, we'd have done that. But at the end of the day, our ratepayers pay for this thing. And those are the folks, and we're not a rich district. We have a lot of disadvantaged communities. We have a lot of, you know, things like that. So we have to have balance. And I think the conclusion here is you see the effort that we put in, and there's a huge return on, I think we're balanced. I think we're really balanced. I'm not going to, somebody wants to compare to other agencies. I kind of do and kind of don't. I'm really proud of us. I know what we've done, and really what we've done the last 5 or 7 years. And I know, I can see, like you said, come see my wall, come have a conversation. There's a huge, I say huge, but there's a significant improvement in what we've been able to do, because we've retooled ourselves, we've conditioned ourselves. We're just really getting in stride. And if we just stay in stride for another 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to get where you want us to be too. Sure. So anyway, Abby and Carol and Eric and all of your staff, Emily, really proud of this presentation. And we've been talking about it for almost a year now, developing this presentation, because it's sort of nebulous. You know, we feel like we know how good it has been, but to deliver it in a public setting is just really awesome. I'm really proud of the work you're doing, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, General Manager Perkins, and staff. I learned a lot today. I'm still learning. Thank you.
So are we. Every day.
Okay, any further questions? Any questions from our audience?
Good morning, Elena Linehan, ratepayer. I want to say it was an excellent presentation, but I'm very impressed that you spoke about how you have the plan in place and then pursue the grant funding, which of course is the logical and only way to go. And there are other entities in the community that have seen dollars and pursued those without having the plan or even the community agreement in place. I found myself in the position of standing at a podium like this and telling a board, don't even apply for this grant. You're not ready. You don't have buy-in. You don't have the project in place. And sometimes they wind up with grants that aren't for the benefit of the community. So I appreciate the fact that you're building the plan first and deciding where you want to go, and then seeking the sources of funding to create it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. And with that, we will close that item, and Haley, you're up.
Staff reports.
I'll go first and I'll be brief. Let's see. I'll go backwards in time if I remember some of the other things, but yesterday, we had a meeting, what I think was a very important meeting with other districts up and down the mountain counties, not every district within the mountain counties, but many of our close partners that we interacted with for a few years now, the CCWD, Utica, Union Power, Amador Water Agency, Twain Harte CSD, Groveland Community Services District, and maybe a couple of others I'm missing. And the theme was, I felt like we needed to have a unified message in response to what happened down there in LA County. And I won't tell you all the details, but the meeting was well received. There's a lot of participation, a lot of collaboration. What's going to come out of that is Abby and her team and a few of the others are going to work together to put together this message that I would want this board to understand and adopt in some manner, because it's important for everybody, especially everybody in this room, to understand what our water systems, when they were built, how they were built, and what really, what are they able to do as far as battling fires. So that'll be good. I'm really happy about that. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, we already talked about it. Last month, I think it was last month, I went to what they call the office hours of McClintock down Sonora. I think once a month, somebody from his office comes up and wants to hear from the community. And so that was where I pitched to, what was his name? Paxton, young man.
I think it starts with a B.
Brixton, Paxton, anyway. I hope he's not listening because I'm butchering his name, but anyway. I pleaded with him about, in light of, again, all these fires that are going on and the vulnerability of our main canal. And we've had these, this grant application, if he could, have McClintock, push FEMA to write us a letter. So anyway, he did. And so that's the end of my report.
Right, as promised, I'll give you an update on Sierra Pines. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been busy on that. We met with the geotechnical engineer and reviewed the geotech report for the site. There was some rock that was found, not a lot, which is great because rock is expensive to excavate. We continue to explore ways to balance the earth work on the site to minimize export from the excavation of the raw water reservoir. We're engaging a consultant on timber harvest plan. We know we've got to do some tree clearing up there, and it's over 3 acres. So we're going to be bringing somebody on board that the district's used in the past on other like fuels reduction projects. PG&E is a critical path item for us. We know up and down the state, people are experiencing project delays related to PG&E. So we went ahead and got an application started with them, and our hope is to at least get a temporary construction service, electric service, so that we have some power out on site during construction, and then we'll work toward the eventual long-term service connection for the facility. And then probably most noteworthy over the last couple of weeks is we conducted 3 confidential meetings with prospective design build entities last week. Dawn and Eric, water treatment plant staff, Trevor and Keith, and then Jennifer, Gadiel, and myself were involved in those, and the intent was just to answer any questions those teams may have as they're crafting their proposal to us. So that was good. Gadiel continues to be really focused on this project. This is his highest priority. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be engaging, well, Comcast, Corey has taken on that. We're going to need broadband service up there, and so he's working through those details. We'll be issuing an addendum to the request for proposal, just clarifying some of the things that came out of those meetings that we had. And then Carolyn and I will probably ping the State Water Board and USDA to make sure we're continuing to be active in our pursuit for the additional funding that we. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll be bringing you these updates, like I said, every meeting.
I got a question for Eric real quick. When you say ping these people, if not right now, but if you could give me a list of the names of those people, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
You can do that.
And I just had a quick update. I think last board meeting, that very day, I think or the day before, there had been a potential federal funding freeze that could have affected some of our projects, including Sierra Pines. I think it might have been 2 weeks before that Eric and I had actually sent an application to USDA for additional funding for Sierra Pines. That federal funding, we don't know exactly what would have happened. Some of the language in it stated that even future projects they were going to be freezing on at that point in time. But I think 2 days later, which if anybody's been watching the news, probably already know this, but that memo from the Office of Management and Budget freezing that federal funding was rescinded. So hopefully that means our application is still going forward. So anyways, just wanted to give you an update on that.
Okay, last meeting, we talked, I think Elena, you brought it up. And so I was glad you did because Emily and I have been talking for a couple of years about this, but we talked about kind of the alphabet soup of acronyms and abbreviations that we use here at TUD. And Emily has coordinated the effort to create this 2 double-sided front and back, that's redundant, double-sided front and back, acronym alphabet list. So I will hand that out to all the directors. This can go in your binders for your, just to keep on you. That'll help you out. And then I have plenty of copies for you guys if you'd like. So you can study them at home and we'll have a quiz next time. So be ready. So anyway, thank you for doing that, Emily. And while I'm talking about Emily, she's like the perfect one to be doing grants right now. She's very meticulous. She checks every tiny little box, even the boxes you didn't know were there. And I just wanted to say, I really appreciate you and you're doing an excellent job. And she's just fantastic. And I'm so happy that we have her here to do that. And I also appreciate President Ringen, your nice words about Hallie. She's just like you described. She jumps in and is willing to do whatever is necessary. So, and she's coming up on our 1-year anniversary with TUD. So hopefully many, many, many more. And she's fantastic. And another employee of ours, Jake in Laxag in our water department, obtained his T4, his water treatment grade 4 certification over the last couple of weeks. And so congratulations to Jakin. And then finally at last meeting, we showed during the coach's corner, we showed the video, the source of supply video. And Director Kearns pointed out, which is something we were already knew, is that there was a couple outdated little sections in that video. So we, in quick order, Emily contacted the gentleman who made the video for us, and with not much to it. We got those things updated, like number of tanks and number of treatment plants, just to make them a little bit more broad because those probably will change again. So anyway, we've updated that video and that's on our website. So if you'd like another copy of it, we'd be happy to send it to you. And that's the end of my report.
Well, good. Thank you, Abby, for doing that. Back to the T4 with Jake in there passing his test. How many T4s we got now in water?
Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5,
5? Okay.
6. 6.
Good to know, because that's pretty rarefied air, T4, like Mr. Perkins is over here. So that's a
Yeah.
good deal. Congratulations to Jake.
Yes.
You don't get one of them.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're
Maybe that's a good thing for Coach's Corner, a couple of math quizzes, huh? Couple of T4 math quizzes. I like it.
Okay, I guess we're to the board. Start down at this end.
Yes, I have nothing to report, but a couple of things that were mentioned in the other reports kind of jogged some thinking. One is General Manager Perkins, when you were talking about meeting with the folks in the region about kind of the crisis that the state's facing and how we as a group, kind of the Sierra group, if you will, what we can do to kind of focus our efforts. And it just occurred to me that relative to the grant funding, are there any, do we ever do joint grant funding applications of folks in the region? I know T-Stan Irwin has a lot of things and Mountain Counties does, but are there ever grants that we can apply in conjunction with other agencies to kind of multiply our effectiveness or to just kind of spread the net a little wider? So one thing that comes to mind, and this came to mind after I went to one of the presentations in Murphy's a couple months ago with some of the other board members, is the brotherhood of the wooden flume, if you will. I mean, we have a number of agencies in our region that have wooden flumes that have the same vulnerabilities that we have. Would there be any benefit to kind of combining our efforts to maybe get some grant funding on a joint basis or a joint application basis? I don't know how that works, but it's just a thought.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea that one will explore, but what first comes to my mind is I don't want to bring more competition to these limited grant funds.
Of course.
My first allegiance is to our ratepayers in this county, so
Absolutely.
I wouldn't want to make it so competitive that we would lose out. But you do have another idea that I'd like to explore with the other managers, the other agencies. So joint efforts.
The one that came to the top of my head, some that we've done collaborated efforts with other agencies would be Muller Mutual Water District, who currently has an application with the state, right? And then we have a number of years ago with the Curtis Creek Elementary School on the mainline project and consolidation project. And then Nine Sisters, with the Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians, they just put in it's not quite complete, it's almost complete, Nine Sisters water treatment tank that's on the reservation that we have coordinated with them, and then we will ultimately own and operate it moving forward to supply them with a more reliable water system. Any others? Yeah, that's a good point. So through the IRWM, we submitted application for a Water Smart grant for meters, and Groveland did also. So I don't know if that's technically, but through the IRWM, we did as well. Good point.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Recently, I went to the Water Committee meeting, and it has a lot of the same things to do as what we heard today. We heard a presentation of Mr. Lind of EN2 and Ms. DiPietro, sorry if I butchered that, of CBI. And Mr. Lind was doing the draft water points where we could take water out to fight the fires. And Ms. DiPietro was doing shaded fuel breaks and fuel reduction in those areas. This is a grant that's funded by the Forest Service, one of the ones you brought in. And when the Southern California fires hit, it's kind of nice to know that we've been working on this for a long time, trying to get ready and trying to get ahead of the game. So I learned a lot. It was a good thing to do.
Director Kearns.
Yeah, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay, on 1:30, attended, participated in the TUD Water Committee meeting, which Director Hollis just gave you an update on. 2:05 was the Tuolumne County Natural Resources Committee meeting, which I alluded to earlier in the meeting. Not much to report out on that, other than it was really great to see our engineer, Tony, be able to take on another part of the job and be like a PR person and information person for the other entities that were there. The other thing, as a heads up for staff and so on, had a report that at the Tuolumne Water Treatment Plant, that was, I guess we had done some fire hardening there. Brush is just high. Time to get out there and whack it down before we got fire problem. So that's it for me. Anything further? Anyone from the audience have anything to say? And if not,